Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the VUU. This is Michael Tino joining you from sunny, hot Peekskill, New York. Let's have our hosts introduce themselves this morning.
Hi, I'm Joanna Fontaine Crawford, and I am here in overcast Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Aisha Hauser, and I'm in Seattle, where spring doesn't really arrive until July.
And I am Terry Bernard in St. Paul, Minnesota, where the storms are coming through, but thankfully we're doing okay here at least, although some pretty bad tornadoes touched down not far away from us in northwestern Wisconsin. So my heart is with the good folks there. Oh, good, Lena's here, yay!
Hello!
So we are glad to be joined this morning by Lena Gardner, the Executive Director of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalists, or Universalism. It's great to have you here, Lena, for our last check-in of the VUU season with BLUU. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. And as you said, my name is Lena Catherine Gardner. I am the Executive Director of the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, also known as BLUU. And I'm happy to be here this morning.
Well, it's great to have you. There are, I guess Terry has disappeared behind the chalice. She is monitoring the live chat we're live tweeting hashtag the VUU, THEVUU. So if you have stuff to let us know, please tweet it with that hashtag, and Terry will get that info to your hosts. There's a lot going on in the world and in Unitarian Universalism. I thought maybe we would start this morning just by recognizing that since we last aired a show, Jim Key, the moderator of our association, has resigned for health issues, and we all want to just send our prayers to Jim and his family as he battles cancer. So if you've not seen the news, they've posted a Caring Bridge site. Apparently, Jim has some very serious cancer diagnosis that he's struggling with. So we really want to send our best wishes to him for his health.
Sending lots of love.
And in the world too, there's lots of things going on in the news and all over, and we can comment on that, or we can just plunge right into to what's on your mind, Lena.
That's a fascinating question. Well, I think first and foremost, as you've already mentioned, the news of Jim's health, just sending him lots of love and strength. It was disheartening, and I just want to lift up that Jim has been such an advocate and an ally for BLUU, and working with us and partnering with us through all of the past 9 or 10 months. So we've been really, we're just sending him lots of love and strength. Then I think what's been on my mind is General Assembly is coming. And it feels like there's a lot of anxiety. It feels like there's a lot of tension. And I think one of my goals is, how do we as a faith not let the fact that there is anxiety and tension cascade into more than it has to be, right? So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think there's sometimes a tendency for people to you can create even more difficult situations by not dealing with your own anxiety and fears and whatever's happening with you individually. And then I think collectively, just from my experience in, the direct action world and in large groups of people, one thing I know is that emotions are contagious, and it's invisible, and it happens really quickly. And sometimes you don't even know what set it off. But I think there are things that we don't understand about our human collectiveness. And so one of the things I'm sitting with is certainly, how do we think about that in the context of being in, New Orleans together at the convention center, and what that all means. So
What I'm hoping, Lena, is that once folks, because also I totally agree with everything you're saying, and part of what's happened on social media is it's also that effect is the same, even though we're not in person. So one of the things that happened with the teach-in is leading up to it, there was just so much anxiety. And then it happened. We had the highest attendance, at least in our congregation, that we've had in a very long time. And some of the reports that we've gotten back from folks have said the same. And I wonder, and even though, I mean, it's not, I mean, some people were moved a little bit toward not being so angry about the words white supremacy, some weren't, but I think the fear of the unknown was more, I don't know what people expected, but being together and for the ministers and the leaders and the religious educators who created a space that was worshipful along with teaching, you know, a place of humility, I think that was helpful. So I'm hoping, because I think there's been a lot of conversation, you probably know more than, I know you know more than I do, about how to set the tone at General Assembly. So we come from a place of humility and remember that we are all in the same boat. We're all working, hopefully, toward a better Unitarian Universalism. And so I'm hoping once we're there together and we're, you know, in person, like some of the things that people wrote me in an email I really wouldn't say to my face, I'm hoping, and maybe I'm just being foolishly optimistic. I don't know.
Well, we are always unpleasantly surprised by the things that people are willing to say to other people's faces at General Assembly. So I think that naming that is actually really important, and naming that we hope to get together and be in relationship with one another and not have the anxiety that is in our movement translate to bad behavior and bad relationship. Maybe easier said than done, but I think it's important to say that right at the beginning.
Are any of y'all seeing any fears, any specific fears being addressed, either online or in other avenues? Specifically about GA.
I mean, so I know there are people on BLUU that have received threats of physical safety and harm. And so we are looking at what does safety and security mean for us? And how do we think about keeping the Black healing space safe, and working with DRUM to coordinate the people of color space? How are we making sure that people aren't in, you know, danger of being hurt? And I think that there's a tendency to not take seriously physical threats of violence towards people of color in particular, and to believe that it isn't real. But I think that we should take them seriously. I also think from watching The Wilderness Journey, which, you know, Terry Bernor put on YouTube for us to all have access to, which are stories of people talking about General Assemblies from, you know, 67 through 1970, and talking about a similar time of racial tension in our country and in our faith, and people were shoved and hit and spit on. And so I think that, you know, to take history seriously, to take people's threats seriously is going to be really important. I think the other thing that's going to be really important, aside from the physical, is you know, emotional and spiritual safety as well. I think that there is tremendous potential for harm and woundedness from white UUs who are just going to want to, like, intellectualize things, or, you know, approach this situation in a way that is less than compassionate and that centers whiteness and that centers white needs. And so I'm hopeful that somehow, some way, and we're trying to work with ARE and a couple other groups to figure out, how do we talk about that? How do we talk about specifically, just because someone may be feeling uncomfortable doesn't mean that you are unsafe. And and to think about the impact of your words and centering yourself in what that feels like on people of color who are already dealing with so much, just surviving in a world that is structurally and in all kinds of ways oppressive. So I think that I have a lot of faith in our co-presidents and the tone that they've been setting in being open and communicating each week about what's happening, that people will listen to them, follow their leadership. I'm hopeful that you know, more ministers will step up and be brave, because I think you know, ministers do have a lot of power in our faith, and people have feelings about that in all kinds of ways. And I'm hopeful that people will step into this moment and really, you know, as the co-presidents wrote in their statements that came out just yesterday, when they said, you know, we have to act as though love is real, and act as though we love each other. And how do we do that? That's what this moment is calling us to do.
Thank you for that, Lena, because you're right. I think at some of my more stressed out moments, it's scary. Some of the things that I was reading at members of BLUU, at Christina, at, you know, interestingly, I got it from people I know more. But I do want to touch on the minister conversation. And Joanna and Michael, I'd love to ask you, because one of the things that I do worry about is, because I have seen, because I think people forget how public Facebook is, white ministers that are not behaving from their best selves, or even behaving in the best of what Unitarian Universalism can be. So when white ministers lead from that place of fear, of anxiety, and really just mirroring kind of the worst fears of white America, that is really, really problematic. And so have you, Michael and Joanne, are you free to say, like, what is the UUMA? You know, how are you all talking to each other to have ministers really step up to the plate, even if they're working through their own anxiety and such?
So, Joanna?
Go ahead.
I think, you know, what I've noticed is small groups of white ministers stepping up to be kind of accountability teams for other people. And I just noticed something going out today of such a team sort of being formed for General Assembly in the model of the white nonsense roundup. But not calling it that, probably. I like the idea of an accountability team for our colleagues. But really, I would say that within the Ministers Association, there is there's a lot of internal stuff going on around this too, and it's hard. So I don't actually think that there's anything formal in the works.
Yeah, I have no idea, because I'm not part of like the UU. I mean, I'm not like an officer or anything in the UUMA, so I don't know about anything official. But what I have been seeing is the people who are stepping into those spaces where people are saying hurtful things and talking to them directly. And I know that some people have already made a space specifically for ministers for white ministers who need to process this and do it away, you know, with some accountability, but where people of color are not being dragged into that and having to see that processing.
So I have a question for both of you until Lena comes back. It looks like she got kicked off. So I guess what surprised me when I started seeing comments and from white ministers is, I guess I asked myself the question, what is missing in the ministerial formation of Unitarian Universalist minister clergy, that in the time of this kind of controversy that is rooted in race, that this happened. I guess part of me was like, wow, I would think that of all our folks, religious professional leadership are at the very least know to not say anything. I mean, because I know there are spaces like there are for religious educators and religious professionals of color that are private. So the idea that this stuff's being said publicly is what was jarring to me by ministers of congregations. And so I guess I was thinking about the form, like, what is it not missing, or is it just that in a time of controversy and pressure and fear that all that goes out the window and you did get it? And
No, I think the big thing is simply generational. The requirements for the MFC requirements have changed. Sometimes it feels like every 3 years they're changing. I know that when I came through, which was very recent, that was a whole other competency that you had. And I know of people who did not make it through the first time specifically because of that. They needed to go back and do some work.
And I think that one of the things that is really, really clear is that there is no formal requirement for ongoing education, continuing education in ministry. And that's changing. There are about to be some recommendations to come out about that. But right now, there is no formal requirement for continuing education. And so it's huge. It's huge. So I got final fellowship six years ago, and I have now no requirements to do anything to keep that. Now I choose, because of who I am and how I see my call to the ministry, to engage in continuing education on issues of race and oppression and related things, but people can choose not to. And that's a really big hole. There's a really big hole in our ministry right there. I want to note that we have some comments from viewers. Clarice Mason writes that I cry at least once a week for all of us, and have begun to use my tears as a meditation. That's really touching, Clarice. I want to just get your voice into this. And David Crockett writes, I'm still trying to digest that people have received threats. Wow, he writes. And I think Lena's back now. It's good to have you back. I think that there's some weather happening in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area that might be messing with Lena and Terry's internet.
Yeah.
But you said just a while ago that it's really important not to underplay that.
Yeah.
Not to ignore that it's happening or pretend that they're not real. Especially in the national climate right now, where we are seeing how the physical safety of people of color is at risk on a regular basis. To ignore that your physical safety might be at risk at General Assembly is wrong, and to not have that be hard to digest.
Yeah.
Is also wrong.
Well, I think there's like a level of, you want to believe that people aren't like that people aren't going to do that. And I guess I just learned my lesson at the 4th Precinct occupation here in Minneapolis after the police shooting death of Jamar Clark, when the police killed Jamar Clark. And, we actually had a lot of friends that were saying, there's white supremacists. This is a real and, serious threat, and we need to take this seriously. And I kind of, maybe I was just naive, and I didn't, or I just didn't want to believe that was still, it's still a clear and present danger. And then, a couple nights later, they came and they shot up the precinct, and they shot 5 people. And one of those individuals was just recently sentenced to like 15 years in jail, which I suppose is some sense of justice. I'm not totally sure. But for me, what it really did was just, I guess, I think like saying it woke me up is kind of a cliche now, because so many people say, oh, I woke up, but I think I was actually just jarred into an understanding of a clear and present danger. And I will no longer downplay threats of physical violence or harm. And I will no longer pretend like my belief or my desire to want to believe that people won't act on those somehow makes the threat less real. And so I think that is where I'm coming from. And to put it in context, to understand that we are not in a bubble. We don't exist in a vacuum as a faith. What's happening right now in the battle for New Orleans, if you go and look at that hashtag, they're taking out monuments of white supremacy. And it is really causing tensions to rise, right? And it is causing, members, like card-carrying members of the KKK and white supremacists to come forward and to try to defend themselves. And of course, we know that violence is a tool they employ. And so I think that like, we need to go in with eyes wide open, and we need to do so not in a way of hysterics, not in a way of unrealistic fears, but in a way that's grounded and takes the threat seriously and says, okay, so how do we mitigate this, and what do we do?
Do you know, has there been any conversation about outside of UUs, of New Orleans cops, anything like that, and security for especially the people?
I'm going to stop you right there. There is no way in hell I would call the cops in New Orleans with Black people around.
No, that's what I'm saying. What I'm asking is, with all of this that's going on, are there any conversations taking place GA-wise about how are we going to protect our people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would involve, so one, I don't know. I mean, I'm not everywhere all the time, but I think that would involve white ministers like yourselves making it clear to folks that they should not be calling the police when a conflict arises, because I'm certain that it's not an if, it's a when. And in that situation, it is not a if, it's a when they target people of color and Black folks in particular, especially in New Orleans. Yeah, I think that that's a good question for like ARE and other folks. I certainly know that we're in conversation, as I said, with our own community around around safety and security.
So because I agree with you, but especially about the police in New Orleans. So knowing that that's not a viable option, I'm just trying to think of like, so how do we create space and know that I mean, in some cases we know who the people are who are making the threats. What does that look like? Like, what is creating a safe, literally safe community look like?
Well, I think a couple of things. I really liked, so before we went to the Women's March on Washington, myself and Ashley Horan and a couple other local folks here, Reverend Jan Eller Isaacs, we held some just like prep to going to the Women's March on Washington. As part of that, Jess Banks, who's a UU, and I think I've talked about this resource before, has a bystander intervention and de-escalation training that I think is really useful, really easy, and really accessible. It's you can even just read through the curricula and get a ton from it, right? In that training, she talks about how awful things are more likely to happen in groups because everybody thinks everybody else will go do something, anything, right? People will say, I don't know what to do, but I know that this is wrong, and they'll get paralyzed in that, right? They'll just feel like, I don't want to make the wrong move here, so I just can't do anything. And so the first step in combating those sort of very human tendencies that happen to all of us is to, one, just pick yourself. Like, it's to acknowledge that those are real, to understand that they're likely to happen to you. And so the first is awareness, and the second is to say, I pick myself. I will be the person to intervene this. I will be the person to de-escalate this. I will be the person, and I'm not going to wait for somebody else, because this is my responsibility. And then the second piece is really understanding that doing something is better than nothing. And I mean, there are certain qualifiers on that, right? Like, I don't mean like, you want to just, haul off and just start hitting someone, right? Or something like that. But even saying like, hey, I don't actually know what's going on here, but this feels really, like it might not be a good situation. Like, whatever language that can come to you in that moment around, like, something in my gut tells me this is off. Can we, do you need help? Like, talking to the person who is experiencing, or who you perceive to be experiencing something, say, do you need help? Do you need assistance? Stuff like that. And so I did have to disconnect my computer, so I'm on my phone, so I actually can't give the link, but I could find it and share it out later. But I think, yeah, just basically, understanding some very basic things about bystander intervention and de-escalation is really important. The other thing that's really important that I can just offer, just from a direct action standpoint, is that it is astounding how far it will go, your ability to keep your own self grounded and not get caught up in fear and what's happening. And that actually is the number one thing you have control over. And so understanding what's happening in your own body, if there is some sort of situation and, you feel like you're getting caught up and sort of adding to the hysteria, like, pull yourself out. Like, if you're a person that can't de-escalate something, or you don't want to, or, what's happening, like, pull yourself out, go ask somebody else, right? Like, things like that are going to be really important. So those are a few resources, the bystander and de-escalation intervention, bystander intervention and de-escalation training by Just Banks. And then just doing your own work to stay grounded is going to be really important.
So the theme of General Assembly this year is resist and rejoice. From y'all's perspective, I'm curious, for everyone's opinion, is there anything that we should be celebrating?
Absolutely. One of the things I've been talking about is that this is an opportunity. This is a breaking open of a new time in our faith. And we should celebrate that.
So this morning on my Facebook feed, a clip from Michelle Alexander came up. I'm not sure where she was speaking, but she made a compelling point about she doesn't actually like the language of resistance for what we're trying to do, we being the collective. She said we're the revolutionary. She said Trump is the resistance to change, to a new world order. And so when she said that, I'm like, wow, so we're trying to do to bring liberation and justice is revolutionary. It is not resistance. She said Trump and his folks are the resistors to liberation and freedom. And she said that because there have been folks fighting for their liberation since day one, since the first slave that ran away, and since the Native Americans tried to fight off the stealing of their land. And so I know that that's the theme of GA. We're not going to change it, but I'm like, wouldn't it have been great if it was, although anyway, revolution is compelling. And I think, look, yes, I'm a part of the white supremacy teach-in, and Lena has been an amazing help in BLUU. And the fact that 2/3 of our 1,000-member congregations did something other than light a chalice that was the same is remarkable. That's even people who, hated the word white supremacy and had a, visceral reaction to it. Somebody said to me, it would have been a bad sign if people simply took it in stride and didn't react to it. So the fact that there was so much discussion, positive and negative, is movement. So I think that's a huge thing to celebrate, that it's exactly what you said, Lena, it's a breaking open. And there is danger of breaking open. Truth telling is a dangerous thing, as you know, all the truth tellers who've been assassinated all throughout our history can tell you. So I think both things are true. There is, a danger and a risk, and the fact that this is broken open and we're finally having a genuine conversation about race and white supremacy and Unitarian Universalism's role in both is a lot to celebrate. As painful as it is, it's really our chance to move forward in a genuine way.
I have to jump in because I've had issues with the word resistance because it's defensive. And I'm not willing to only play defense. And I love, Clarence Skinner would use the term agitator, agitators for universal peace, agitators for what we're trying to have happen. And I like that. That has more forward movement for me.
So maybe we're agitating and celebrating instead of resisting and rejoicing. But last I clicked on the BLUU map, there were 692 congregations that had signed up for the teach-in. 692.
We should just celebrate for that.
Right? We have to celebrate that. And I've just started plotting out my GA schedule. People want meetings, blah, blah, blah. You know how it works. All of you have been to GA, right? So I'm looking at the GA schedule, and the first thing I try and do is say, which workshops do I want to go to? So I look through the workshop offerings, and the number of workshops that BLUU is offering, the number of workshops related to anti-racism and white supremacy culture. Robin DiAngelo is giving workshops. I mean, just if you look at the workshops, I mean, not all of them are, make me throw my hands up in the air in celebration, but way more than at any GA that I remember, which is really, really great. And I think we also are celebrating the UUA board's clarity around this. But the UUA board made a commitment to BLUU and has been clear about that commitment and firm in that commitment, and clear about how they want our co-presidents to help move us forward, and our new president, whoever she may be, to move us forward in this. And I celebrate that the UUA board's clarity in this too.
Yeah. Can I just echo that about the board? And I also want to lift up specifically like the folks of color, Alandria Williams, Christina Rivera, and Gregory Boyd, around just their carrying a lot, and I think, and yes, and then the board as a collective, just their unwavering support has been pretty amazing. So, and can I just put in a special plug for 2 BLUU sessions that I'm really excited about, and I also think Leslie might join us for a little bit, which would be great. We'll just wait for her too. But one session that we're doing, and let me just adjust my slipping phone because I had to get online from my phone instead of the internet, is by Dr. Sanyika, who was part of the original BAC group in 1967, is coming to do a workshop. And they're going to be just talking about this question of white supremacy. And I'm trying to find the exact name of it. Here it is: Black Power Challenges Liberal Religion 50 Years Later. And I am super excited for that. I've been on the phone with Baba Sanyika, and I'm just really excited to hear about this. Obviously, it's like part of, my direct history as a Black UU, but it's also, I think, just going to be really important. And he's presenting that with Reverend Julie Kane, who I don't know, but that should be a really good session. And then the other session that I really, really want to hype up for folks is around anti-Blackness. So last year we did this session and we broke folks out into identity caucus groups. So the white folks with the white folks, Black folks with the Black folks, and non-Black POC folks. And we did that for a very particular reason, because the session we did on anti-Blackness last year was, it hits Black folks in a different way than it hits other people, and we didn't want to, we just wanted to hold people in that without the gaze of non-Black folks. What we heard from that was that people wanted to do more, they wanted to go deeper, and they wanted to understand more about this idea of anti-Blackness, which is separate from white supremacy, and it's separate from racism, and it's separate. It's a separate thing. Hey, there's Leslie, welcome. I'm just pumping up our anti-Blackness session. So this year we're bringing Professor Michael Dumas, who from Berkeley, and Dr. Sakia Amin, who is part of the BLUU lead team, to do a conversation and dialogue about what is anti-Blackness, how it operates, and what is our calling as religious folks, as particularly as UUs, to respond to a world that is so saturated in anti-Blackness. And so I'm really excited for that session. I think it's going to be really, really good. I'm facilitating that conversation. I'm going to try and have the professor speak in a language we can understand. Every time I'm in a room with Dr. Sakia Amin, I'm like, I need my dictionary. So it's going to be really, really good.
So let's take a moment to welcome Leslie Mac into the conversation. Leslie, we're talking about General Assembly and things that we're excited about right now, though we've also touched on things we're concerned about. How are you today, and what are you looking forward to at GA?
I think you're muted, Leslie.
Your sound is not working there.
Can you hear me now? Am I here? Are you guys hearing me? Okay, cool. Yeah, I am, this GA, I'm really excited to see everything kind of come to fruition. I think, you know, last year we were a little bit experimental in the healing space, not knowing what people were looking for, what they were in need of. And so this year we have a little more clarity around that. So I'm really excited to see more specific programming in that space and a lot of different things that are going to happen there. And I think, you know, this is a great opportunity for our faith, is what I see this GA as. I think it's going to be challenging, but this work is challenging. And I think that, you know, I'm hopeful that people can come to New Orleans with an understanding that this is not, you know, it's going to look a little different than it probably has in previous years. And we're going to be grappling with some things we probably haven't gotten to the heart of in previous years. And so I'm excited for all of that work to happen. I know that at our convening, so many of our attendees were really excited about going to GA. People have never been to GA before. And so I'm excited for all of those, you know, connections to be made and people to kind of see the full, you know, deep breadth of what being a UU, you know, looks like, and what that means. And so many people from our, from the convening went home with the goal of becoming a delegate, and so many of them have done that. So I'm really excited for all of those conversations to be really robust and wonderful at GA this year.
Yes, and along the lines of celebrating, I just heard from Didi Delgado and Nora Rossman that the extra $150,000 that the board approved to support people of color to get to General Assembly, there have been 185 applications for that. So I think that is just like so important to celebrate, because it just really shows that people of color, this faith is important to us, and you know, and it's just great. So I wanted to add that too.
And I think it makes it extra important what spaces we have that are people of color spaces at GA, and how white folks respect those spaces. Because the last thing I think we want is for all these folks of color to come to GA really excited and be plunged in the middle of like this celebration of whiteness, right? Because nobody needs that. But least of all, people of color who are new to GA. And let's be clear, white supremacy culture means that we center whiteness in our large gatherings too, right? So so can you talk a little bit more about what spaces there will be at GA specifically for people of color?
I'm going to actually invite Leslie to talk about that while I try to switch over to see if I can get back on the internet. So.
Sure. So BLUU is going to be holding explicitly Black healing spaces as we did last year. We will have pastoral care set up throughout the times that it's open. We're also going to be doing some specific explicitly Black worship in that space. And then we're going to craft some other things around, you know, just building community together, having some general discussions about things. I think last year, you know, we knew we needed a space for people to go to, and we had pastors set up in there, some pastoral care, but we didn't recognize how much people just wanted to like be with each other, you know, so we ended up adding like a game night for people to just room with more than 3 Black UUs before, you know, and so it was really something that was meaningful for them. And so we're starting to have discussions around what that looks like. We're going to be holding some specific gender nonconforming and trans and LGBTQ space for folks as well. So that's really exciting. And then also our siblings over at Drum are going to be holding POCI healing space as well for all people of color. And that's really exciting to see. We were able to go and share space with them last year, and so we expect to do more of that as well. I know, Lena, you might have a little more understanding of the Drum space. I don't want to speak out of turn about what their plans are.
Yes, they sent me some information. I haven't fully looked at it yet about the Drum space, but I definitely know that they're having it. And I don't know if you also talked about that BLUU has its own ministerial pastoral care team that we're putting together for Black UUs. And I know Drum is doing the same thing for people of color. And so I think that those are also additional resources that will be really important for folks, just to know that there is pastoral care available. And I also know that there will be an increased number of white pastoral care team folks as well to help hold some of those other tensions we were talking about earlier. So.
I was on the conversation after last year's GA with Jim Key and a group, I think it was called Cross-Cultural Team Committee. And one of the interesting things that came out of when folks realized there was a Black healing space, that's when the request for all the other space came. So I found that fascinating because there hadn't been any such thing, I don't think, at a GA before. And so you all we're trailblazers in many, many ways, but that's just one of the ways. So thank you for that.
I think it's important to note that we got a lot of pushback pushing for that space. You know, it was not without a lot of heavy lifting that we had to do as an organizing collective. In fact, everything that we did at GA last year was met with direct and very specific pushback, asking us not to do all the things that we wanted to do. So, you know, and we, Lena and I are, you know, full-time organizers, so this is something we encounter frequently, but we understand that the work that we do to push things forward often benefits people other than those that are most affected in our initial, you know, understanding. And that's great. I mean, I think that's how organizing generally works, but it's not without, you know, it's pains. You know, we kind of took the hit last year to kind of push for a lot of these things, whether it was, you know, splitting up in affinity spaces for sessions or having the Black only healing space and lots of the other things we wanted to do, you know, little things like, you know, they asked me for what I was going to say at the closing ceremony, like 7 months before. I literally like full on just was really honest. I go, I'll give you words right now. I will tell you they will for sure not be what I'm going to say in June. And I was really direct. I was like, listen, I know for a fact, statistically, at least 6 more Black people will be killed by police between now and when we go to General Assembly. Life will occur and things will happen both outside the space and inside of it that will require us to speak differently than whatever you're asking me for right now. So there were lots of little things like that, but definitely the healing space was one that was kind of, you know, for sure pushed back on. And I have to give a specific shout out to Samuel.
Yes, that's what I was gonna do. Yes.
Who, as part of the GA planning committee, like not just fought for us, but like physically went to the site, made sure he specifically chose the location we were going to have, and was really, really in touch with us and sent us pictures when he went to do his site visit and everything. So just so much love for him and so much support that he's provided us over the last couple of years.
Yes,
And
we
so
love you, Samuel.
Those things are things we need to celebrate too. The existence of that space, the existence of people in leadership who are going to fight for that space. And we can be really clear here on The View, white minister talking to my white siblings out there. If you've got a problem with this space, find a member of the right relationship team or come talk to me. Like, okay, because this is really important. I think we need to be really clear about that. We have some more comments here too. Seth Muhammad Moore writes, even if it's only through the ripple effects in other faiths, and it won't be limited to that, this work has the potential to be the transformation this entire country.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let us hope that is the case. Amen to you. Thank you for that comment, Seth.
Can I just lift up just the truth in that? First of all, hey Seth, love you. Thank you for that comment. Thank you for lifting that up. I think that that's absolutely right. The folks who have reached out to us, you know, we did, even before the white supremacy teach-in was on, you know, became a thing, we had planned our white supremacy panel discussion, right? And so out of that, and then the timing just really dovetailed really beautifully with the white supremacy teach-in. And out of that, like Lenny Duncan from Decolonizing Lutheranism, Vahisha from North Carolina, and you know, other folks outside of our faith, we are starting to build these partnerships and these relationships, and to move this work beyond our faith. And I'm just like waiting for the moment when I feel like there's going to be an even more clear, and I'm struggling for the right language here, but threshold moment where some folks are gonna, and in particular, I'm talking about a lot of white folks, right, are gonna see that that there is no division between dismantling white supremacy and our faith, that is the work of our faith, right, in this time, living in the heart of the empire as we do. And, you know, I've been in many discussions where I've heard this false dichotomy set up that, well, I just came here for a spiritual community, not this political stuff. And I think that we are coming to a place where folks, and hopefully this is, I think, part of the.
Uh-oh.
Looks like Lena's frozen. Is she?
Oh no, she's
frozen to all of you.
Man, she was just about to drop some gems.
That's right. Always.
Always.
Well, you know, a wise colleague whose face I see at the bottom of the screen talks about this being our calling to love the hell out of the world, right? And so when Lena says this is the work of our faith to dismantle white supremacy, that's what I see it as, at least.
It's true. Also, something I talk about a lot is that the way that we do this work is just as important as the work that we do. So it's really important that as we go about, you know, justice work, whatever we're doing as UUs or as a faith community, that we know that we are trying to dismantle supremacy in the act of doing it, right? So that we are building the community that we want and the world that we want in the work that we do. It's really not something where it's like, oh, we'll do all these things and then we'll dismantle supremacy. No, we've got to build all of that work into the structure of what we do, because that's how we build the beloved community. That's how we come together and create a different world. And one of the other things just put me in mind that Seth mentioned is, you know, we launched the Support for Black Organizers initiative last year. and had amazing response. Over 500 congregations stepped up and said yes, they wanted to participate. And it's not something we've done a lot of fanfare since then with, but slowly we've been connecting local organizers with Black organizers with UU congregations for meeting space, for all sorts of support roles. And about a week and a half ago, there was a large museum workers conference in St. Louis, and amazing organizer named Aaliyah Brown, who runs a group called Ferguson, Museum Workers Respond to Ferguson. She contacted me and she said, hey, we want to do a meetup of just the Black attendees at this event. It was becoming difficult to do at the location that they were holding the conference. And she said, could we help them out? And First UU St. Louis stepped up and said, absolutely, they can come here. And you know, Aaliyah called me almost in tears, and she said when they pulled up, they saw First UU's Black Lives Matter banner. It was the first thing they saw when they pulled up to start putting together the event. And this was an event that they didn't allow any phones inside because they really wanted to have some real heart work done in a closed space in the sanctuary of a UU church that's, you know, 90% plus white. This is the kind of work that, you know, is beyond transformational. It's introducing our faith to people in such a natural, organic, and authentic way. And I am really excited to see more of those connections be made. Even Seth, that comment in here, you know, Lena and I connected with Seth at Black Momentum right before the convening, and we were talking to her about our faith and about BLUU and how excited we were. And she said, well, I'd like to come to the convening. And we were like, sure, come. And she came, you know, and she made connections with local Black UUs in her area in Florida, and it was beautiful. So for me, that's the things about the work that we do as BLUU that really get me super excited to really take the ability to put the resources that we have in our congregations and put them in full focus on these organizers that are doing amazing work in local communities.
I just want to say I'm back. I don't know when I got lost, but.
You got lost right before you were going to drop everything, so maybe I'll just drop it one more time. You were talking about I remember you were just saying a threshold moment where our faith is going to realize that, you know, that person that says, I just came here for a spiritual home and not for this political stuff. That's what you were saying.
Yeah, so I was just saying that I think we're at this moment where people are going to realize that there isn't a division between the spiritual and the political, just like we can't, you know, divide our bodies and the world we live in from our spirits. And so we have to, I think, come to that realization as a faith. And realize that that means we have to move deeper into discomfort to be able to be these agitators, to be able to be, you know, maladjusted to the world. And that means giving up some comfort and getting into the fight more. And I feel like we're on the precipice of this sort of breakthrough or threshold, you know, moment. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're building towards it. And I think that we will certainly be able to hold it when it happens. I also don't see it happening without some folks saying this isn't for me. And I want to be clear that we have to be willing as people of faith to be okay with that and to say in the most sincerest and authentic of ways, okay, go and be well in what you do. If this isn't, you know, if your central faith isn't going to be around dismantling white supremacy and understanding all of the threads that leads back to in all of the different oppressions, from gender oppressions to all different kinds of things. And, you know, really understanding that we live in the heart of the empire and there's no way to get around that.
And also, you know, this is about building our faith in a very authentic way as well. You know, so many people like to focus on the potential losses and not really address the potential gains. And if you look at the historical data for our faith and in terms of the total number of participants in our congregations, you'll see from the 60s straight through to today, when we stand for something is when we bring it on. And that's just a fact. You know, you can see the numbers, you know, don't lie. They show when we stood for the civil rights movement, our numbers grew. And when we didn't fulfill that promise to BUUC. They dropped off. When we came back and started pushing our welcoming congregations and stood up for our LGBTQ siblings, our numbers rose again, and we are in a dip right now. We're in a dip because we don't stand for anything. That's why the
Amen.
Is, right? And so we need to understand though that is just how people sign on to things that represent positivity and stand for something. And that's what we're looking to make sure that we are defined well in the public sphere, both internally and externally. We stand for justice. We stand for liberty. We stand for equality. Those are the things that we are about. And if we're not dismantling supremacy, we can't say we stand for any of those things.
No, we're upholding it. If we're not standing for those things, all we're doing is upholding it. And speaking of the public sphere, we have to mention that Leslie Mac and Marissa Janae are going to be on The Daily Show.
Yeah.
Do you know when yet? Do you know when you're going to be on?
It's going to be in about, actually Roy texted me yesterday, it's about a month from now. It's about 4 weeks. So in
What's
June.
June?
Roy
texted me yesterday.
Roy was Jr.? Okay, all right.
He did. He's very funny, very nice. And anybody who got May safety pin boxes, he packed quite a few of them. So lucky you.
As Leslie Mac said on Facebook not too long ago, silence is violence, right? So, and that goes for personal silence, that goes for institutional silence, that goes for the silence of our whole faith movement too. So I noticed we're coming up on the top of the hour. So Lena and Leslie, do you have any final words of wisdom or things to celebrate or?
No final words, just really excited about the BLUU Min launch in a couple weeks. I don't know if you got to talk about it all.
We didn't.
So we are launching the BLUU Ministerial Network on the 29th of May. We're really excited about it. It's led by Amanda and Michael Slack on the OC, who's taking the lead, and also Takia has been doing an immense amount of work. It's going to include office hours for Black UUs to actually have direct pastoral care. We're going to be doing online work. Online worship. We're also going to be doing like daily affirmations via text. It's going to be a really robust program to really connect people to our faith in a really great way, because one of the things we found, especially at the convening, is so many Black youths are not directly connected to a brick and mortar congregation. And so for us, it was really important to provide some structural pastoral care that would address those folks' needs, because they are very real. So we're really excited to launch that. And you can follow BLUU, BLUU Ministry on both Instagram and on Twitter if you want to stay in touch with all that. And also, I don't know, can we announce we can't announce the text thing yet, right? No.
Not yet.
Okay, never mind. That'll be another, next month we'll talk about that.
Stay tuned for announcements to come.
Yeah. More to come, yeah.
Thank you so much. So for those of us who are with us every week, if you've been watching the news and seeing the protests of the handmaids in the state capitol in Texas, in Austin, Texas, Aaron Walter, who is a UU candidate for ministry, actually newly fellowshipped, but not yet ordained UU minister, and one of the Texas handmaids will be joining us on The VUU next week. So final thoughts from Aisha or Joanna?
Thank y'all for being on, as always.
Thank you for your work and moving our faith forward, because it was after I went to the BLUU convening that y'all put seeds in my head. So thank you both.
So thank you, Lena, thank you, Leslie, and thank you, everyone. This has been The VUU, and we'll see you next week.